to the ballpark they called the house that Ruth built from 1923 to 1973. We welcome you all to relive with us through this afternoon's program some of the great moments in Yankee Stadium history, recaptured today by the presence of a host of renowned and distinguished guests. Our first guest had a brilliant career as a Yankee pitcher. In fact, he won more games than any man in Yankee history. The date was October 4th, 1961, and Yankee Stadium was the site for the World Series against Cincinnati. Out went this great left-hander, and up went the zeros on the scoreboard. That day, October 4th, 1961, Whitey Ford broke Babe Ruth's record for consecutive scoreless innings in a World Series. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome Whitey Ford. Our next guest was a frequent battery mate of Whitey's, but it was as an outfielder that he experienced his greatest day in Yankee Stadium. It's the 1958 World Series against the Braves, and Elston Howard is manning left field. The Yankees are seeking to avenge a series loss from the year before, and seeking to overcome a 3-1 deficit this time around. History was shining in left field this day, for young Elston Howard made a sensational catch on his knees in short left, thwarting a Milwaukee rally as the Yankees went on to overturn the tide and defeat the Braves. Here he is, our good friend and Yankee coach, Elston Howard. World Series heroics were routine to our next guest. Repeatedly, he was the star of the Fall Classic during the early 50s. Both at the bat and on the field, his inspirational leadership and timely contributions seemed to set the pattern for Yankees' success. It was highlighted, perhaps best of all, in 1952 World Series, when he charged in from second base to make a sensational catch off the bat of the great Jackie Robinson to send the Yankees onward to victory. Here today, as manager of the Yankees, Billy Martin. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point of our program, we had hoped to introduce a man very dear to sports fans in New York, a man who was one of the toughest Yankee opponents during the 1950s, a man whose presence in Yankee Stadium usually spelled trouble for the Yankees. But we've come to love this man over the years for the wonderful human being he is. He's now watching at home on television. Let's have a great hand for our dear friend, Roy Campanella. Football experienced some historic moments in this park, and this afternoon we also recall some of the immortal duels in both the college and professional ranks which took place here. The date, November 19th, 1946. The opponents, arch rivals Notre Dame and Army, American powerhouses who met in Yankee Stadium annually for 20 years. Pitted against each other were some of the finest collegiate athletes of all time. On into the late afternoon, they fought that day, but when it was over, neither side would yield. The result, a classic 0-0 tie before a packed Yankee Stadium crowd. Here today, the quarterbacks from those two great clubs. From Notre Dame, Johnny Lou Gehrig. And from West Point, Arnold Tucker. Professional football had its finest hour in Yankee Stadium. The date, December 12th, 1958. And matched against one another were the great players of the New York Giants and the Baltimore Colts. It's still considered to be the greatest football game ever played, and it became the first championship game to ever enter sudden death overtime. Finally, with night falling, Johnny Unitas handed off to Alan Amici, and the Colts were the world champions. Listen.
3rd and 1 to go for a championship. A pass to Muchler, put the ball on the 1-yard line. Barking out the signals for the Baltimore Colts. Unitas gives to Amici. The Colts are the world champions. Amici scores.
Back today from that epic struggle. Here from the Giants, Kyle Rote and Frank Gifford. And from the Colts, Jim Parker and head coach Weeb Eubank. Our next guest pitched the greatest game in baseball history. What more need be said? The date, October 8th, 1956. Yankee Stadium was the scene for the 5th game of the World Series against the Brooklyn Dodgers. Listen now to the memorable last pitch as millions heard it on the radio that day.
The greatest. 2 strikes and a ball. Mitchell waiting. Stands deep, feet close together. Larsen is ready. Gets the sign. 2 strikes, ball 1. Here comes the pitch. Strike 3. A no-hitter. A perfect game for John Larsen. Right.
And here's the man who wrote history 20 years ago with a perfect game, Don Larsen. Don's battery mate that day was an immortal in his own right. Today, he's a member of the Hall of Fame, and the man who hit more home runs than any catcher in baseball history. 3 times the American League's most valuable player, and the holder of more World Series records than any man who ever lived. Back home this year, as a member of the Yankee coaching staff, is Yogi Berra. We now seek to recall the memory of a man who was thought to be indestructible. For 13 seasons, he never missed a game. Lou Gehrig played 2,130 consecutive games, and along the way became the only Yankee to ever hit 4 home runs in one game. On July 4th, 1939, fans throughout the world heard Lou Gehrig say goodbye with these tearful words. Listen.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Ladies and gentlemen, here now is the widow of Lou Gehrig, Mrs. Eleanor Gehrig. When Yankee Stadium first opened on April 18th, 1923, it was only appropriate that the first home run would be hit by the man who is the greatest sports hero of all time, a man whose personality and contribution of all time, a man whose personality and contributions to American sports transcended his legacy in the record book. Represented today by his widow Claire, let's salute Babe Ruth's memory with a great welcome to Mrs. Babe Ruth. We are honored also today to have Babe Ruth's 2 daughters, Dorothy and Julia, here with us. They're seated by the Yankee dugout. Ladies and gentlemen,